Hey y'all, I'm back with a new project today, and this time I'm going to be sharing how I created a DIY junk journal using my daughter's artwork from preschool for about 3 years. So I had a ton of her artwork just piled up in a bin, and I had no idea what to do with it. So I thought it would be really fun to create a junk journal that you can add things to or keep as is. It's kind of just how you want. Um, I am starting by folding up, simply folding in half the artwork, and you'll see that it's all different sizes, and I kind of like it like that. So if you have things that are different shapes, different sizes, you can certainly cut things down kind of like I'm doing now, but I'm using kind of a standard letter size for the size of the or I guess the height of the journal. But as far as putting the different pieces of artwork in, I'm just kind of folding those up, and then I'll show you how I put this all together. So a couple of the pieces, I think it's kind of fun to add in rather than fold those up. And so some of the smaller pieces, I have gone back and added them with adhesive on the different pages. I have everything from her first day of school sign to her like Mother's Day cards to me that she made at school. I also even have this little piece right here that I'm about to put in is her first, I don't know if it's like, I forget what they call it, but it's kind of like a little form or document that shows how her day was, like how many bowel movements she had. Of course, this is when she was 2, but how she ate and so on. So I kept that very first one, and I'm actually glad that I did. I'm normally one to throw stuff away pretty quickly, but I'm really glad that I held on to some of these special pieces. So now that I have all of those folded, I'm just simply going to use my bone folder to make sure that it's fairly flat, and then I'm going to feed it right through my sewing machine after I put the cover on. So each cover is the same size. I'm taking in a 12 by 12 piece of paper. I'm just folding it in half, cutting off that little strip, the manufacturer strip there at the bottom, and then I am just going to roughly measure. So you'll see. I also want to mention that I added some fun little elements into these journals, like little envelopes and just different things you can tuck stuff in. Like if she created little notes or if you wrote lunch notes, this is a great way to add those in. So you'll see there that I roughly chopped off the excess that was hanging over and then roughly chopped the top of the pattern paper. I'm going to feed it right through my sewing machine, right down the middle. And then now I have now I'm going to go ahead and feed it now because I actually ended up going back and putting a clip so that it would all stay in place. But anyway, I went ahead and fed it through my sewing machine right in the middle, and then now I have a little book. So this is, I guess, what you in the junk journal world or in the planner world you call a signature. So I have about 7 of these books, and they're all full of artwork. So now moving on to the little bit more, I guess for me, it was more complicated to create this. So this is going to be the cover. And what I've done is kind of ignore the fact that this is a cereal box, number one, and number two, that it's already put together. If my junk journal if I had more signatures, I would have just grabbed this cereal box and left it as is and not chopped it up. I would only have cut it down to the size or the height of the book. But since it's that my book is going to be a little bit more, I guess I want my signatures to be more tight. So the spine was a little bit too thick for what I wanted. So I simply just used the cereal box for a more firm paper. So I just use it for the chipboard. So I'm just kind of deconstructing it basically. So I'm taking apart the cereal box. I didn't have any chipboard, or I didn't have enough chipboard to make the cover and the spine and the back of the book. And so I'm just roughly measuring. This is, I don't measure things perfectly, and that is how I've always been. I cannot stand that just because I feel like it takes away, for me particularly, it takes the fun away. And so if I have to sit and measure things, I'll get bored with scrapbooking, and I don't want to get very bored with scrapbooking. So I just roughly measured like with a pen, or I just kind of marked where I wanted them cut. And I'm going to do the same with the spine. So you'll see why that spine is a little bit too thick for my books. And I didn't want my books to I wanted them to fit pretty snug. So I'm going to cut it down probably about like 1/4 of an inch. That's just a rough estimate. I'm going to cut it down a little bit on both sides, which probably equals 1/4 inch. And I'm also going to chop the top of it. And I just kind of roughly measured that as well. Now I have 3 pieces. And if you want to see more of like professional people doing this kind of stuff, I feel like you should maybe search like no sew junk journal covers or no sew junk journals, because they'll show you a perfect way to do this. This is not, I'm not an expert at this. This is honestly my first time making this. So now I have 3 different pieces. I have the front, the back, and then I have the spine. And what I'm simply going to do is, instead of using fabric, which I was going to use and I started to use and then I ripped it off because I didn't like it, I'm just going to simply grab some 12 by 12 paper, and you'll see that my cover and my back and my spine won't all fit, and you'll see how I fix that. So I'm simply going to adhere that. Now I would use extreme adhesive if you have it. I'm simply going to adhere the front and the spine and then part of the back to this. And then I'm going to go ahead and fold it just to make sure it folds okay. Now you'll notice I didn't like put the spine just flush up against the back and the front. I left like the tiniest little gap. And you really, as long as, I mean, you can put it flush up, as long as you can fold it, and I would just say play with it. As long as you can fold the back and the front, then I feel like you'll be fine. So I'm going to cut off the excess, again, not measuring, just roughly cutting. This is honestly the easiest way that I've found so far for me particularly, or for me personally, to do this. I tried the fabric, and the fabric was just a little too thin and a little too loose for me. So now, because I ran out of paper and I don't have a long sheet of like 2 12 by 12 pieces of paper put together, I just went ahead and filled the other side of that, or the other end of that paper. So the back cover, I'm actually going to end up using it as the front cover, but anyway, so that the back cover could have the rest of it, the chipboard, covered. So I now have the spine, the front, and the back, one of those sides covered. Now I'm going to spend a little bit of time covering the inside. So again, roughly measuring, not, I mean, you guys all will know how to do this. I sped it up pretty quickly because I figured this is kind of one of those things that anybody can do. You just roughly measure, get your paper, add adhesive, and then glue it right on. You can use Mod Podge if you think that will work better. If you were using fabric, I'd probably use like Mod Podge or liquid glue, but for paper, I prefer like more of a dry glue, so a tape runner or Tombow extreme adhesive, especially for a book that you want to last for pretty much forever. So again, just roughly measuring, I'm going to add you can see I cut that down a little bit too short. It's a pretty easy fix. I don't have to waste that paper or set it aside or even cut another piece. I'm just going to go ahead and adhere it to that side, and then I'm going to take one little strip of paper for the top, and I'm simply going to kind of make a little design. So I'm going to get my little punch, make a scalloped edge, and make it look like I did that on purpose. So I'm going to finish this up. I'm going to also adhere that to the cover, and then, or one of the covers, it's either the back or the front. And then I'm simply going to do the spine, and I won't go into a lot of detail on how I did that. Basically just measure. You can measure by using a pencil, you can measure it out by using a ruler, whatever works best for you is pretty much what you should do. You can see there I also cut that one a little bit too small, so I had to use another strip of paper, and again, it's just trial and error. So what I did was I just added a little bit of stitching, and you'll see it in my, you definitely do not have to do that, but you'll see it in my final photos just for some character. And then I do want to go back and decorate the outside of this, but not too much because it is a cover, and it's going to be like set up against stuff, so I don't want it to get ruined. In order to add your signatures to your journal, if you want a no-sew version, the best way to do it is to grab, or in my opinion, the best way to do it is to grab some baker's twine that isn't too frayish, if that makes sense. Like it's more of a firm, bound really well type of twine, and cut as big of a piece as you think you might need in order to like go inside, in order to go around the book. So you'll find the middle, kind of like I'm doing right now. You'll set it kind of spine to spine, and then you'll just tie the inside, and you'll tie a pretty tight knot. So I just kind of tie it, then I cut off the excess, and then I adjust it to make sure that I'm not overlapping the thread, or the string, which it's really easy not to do that. This was probably the easier part of this. So you'll see there that I'm just going to pull that twine down to make sure that it's the second in line, and then I'm going to move on to the third piece. And I'm going to speed this up just because at this point I feel like you guys probably understand it, but I still will keep this in just in case you want to continue watching this process. So again, I'm going to lay the twine out, find the middle, tie the knot in the middle of the book, adjust it to make sure that it's lined up. I'm going to do the same thing with the next 4, I believe. So the baker's twine I found on Amazon, and I'll link that down below. If you're worried about some of the artwork being covered up, or even like part of it being shown and then the other part of it being in the back, like part of it being shown at the beginning and then the other part being shown in the back, it's kind of your preference on how you work with that. I cut some of her artwork up. It didn't bother me to do that. And I also think it's just kind of gives it some character to look through this as a book versus like having it just in a bin, if that makes sense. And I think she'll be really excited to see how this turned out because she has not seen it yet. So I also want to mention that one of the books, particularly the one that I am knotting now, was all her holiday stuff. So it was Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Valentine's. So I put all of that into one little signature because I thought that'd be kind of fun to look at all the different seasons that she created stuff. Now, as far as chronological order, I did not worry about that. In fact, I accidentally added the very first book. I unintentionally, or the very first book is unintentionally like the very beginning of her school, but I didn't really, at the very, very beginning. So you'll see there, it's her first day of school. And I honestly didn't even mean to do that. It just worked out perfectly, but otherwise it is not in chronological order. So I wouldn't worry too much about that unless you're concerned about that. But you can certainly do that if you want more of like a progress. So I think I'll do that with like kindergarten first, second. That way you can kind of see how much better her writing gets and how much better her artwork gets. But as far as preschool, I didn't worry too much about that. So this is a junk journal. I'm going to have it just kind of around so that I can add little pictures here and there of maybe like her little fun days that she had where she created some of these things, especially the holiday ones. And that is pretty much it. Here's a couple of final photos. I hope you guys enjoyed this process. Let me know if you have any questions or let me know your thoughts, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.